Welcoming Dr. Ellie Zarrabian, host of From Chaos to Connection, Growing from Pain Toward Community. Are you ready to make the most of your challenges while moving ahead with your dreams? Do you want your spiritual growth to be part of your healing while living your life with purpose? On Chaos to Connection, you will find resources to transform your difficulties into connections with others. Change is achievable. Dr. Ellie helps you make change both within and in the world. Learn to heal past traumas, become more self-assured, and take action in the world. No matter your spiritual background or cultural heritage, we will work together to transform pain and trauma to community and well-being. You can make this world a better place, starting with yourself. From Chaos to Connection starts now.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining me live today. I'm Dr. Ellie Zarrabian, and this is my show, From Chaos to Connection. If you're interested in the topic of personal growth and building better relationships at home and in the world, then you're in the right place. Let me first take a few minutes to introduce myself and my background and talk to you about the concept of resilience. I think given what we're faced with globally, we could all use some pointers on how to remain more secure and sane, and perhaps even grow as a result of all that's going on. My story, my personal journey, in many ways has prepared me for what's happening in the world today. You see, my story is one of death, rebirth, and resurrection. And if that sounds a little biblical to you, then you're correct. I believe that anyone who has lived through a difficult childhood and has turned out okay, and even went on to become an exceptional human being as an adult, has lived a biblical story. My story began from the minute I was born. You see, I was born in Tehran, Iran, into a middle-class Jewish family. And my earliest memories of my childhood home is waking up every morning to see the daily newspaper splattered with photographs of executions that took place the day before. This was a time of social unrest, war, and a revolution. I remember I used to study those pictures very carefully. Of course, at the time, I didn't know what they were, but I always wondered why the men stood up so upright with their hands tied behind their back and their eyes blindfolded. I never knew why they had to cover their eyes. I also remember seeing their clothes splattered with blood, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's what you look like when you're dead. Another vivid memory that I have is auditory. I'll never forget the sound of dropping bombs. There's a distinct high-pitched sound that's very similar to fireworks. It's just 1,000 times stronger. To this day, I love to watch fireworks, but every time I go out for 4th of July, I have to mentally prepare. So these were just some of the memories from the beginning of my life, and just the beginning of the struggles of what life had installed for me. Psychologists say that if a child has undergone severe childhood experiences, the prognosis for a healthy and happy life is very poor. In fact, most people with severe childhood trauma grow up to have many problems as adults. They may suffer from mental illness, health issues, drug and alcohol addiction and abuse, homelessness, and even die an early death. But I'm here to tell you that none of those outcomes happened for me. Although I did struggle with depression in my 20s, for the most part, I was able to go on and create a bountiful life for myself, surrounded with beautiful children, a home, good friends, good health, and a fulfilling practice. Most importantly, I've been blessed with a great deal of joy in my heart, despite all the hardship I have endured. In psychology, we call this resilience. And psychologists always want to know what makes some people so resilient in the face of so much difficulty in life. How is it possible that some people can endure so much pain and still turn out to be okay, and some even become exceptional human beings, while others with much less difficulty can end up struggling so much in life? My hope for creating these podcasts is to help you learn more about resilience by giving you examples of my own life and the lives of clients I have worked with. I hope you too can learn to become stronger in the face of difficulties, especially given all that's happening around us in the world today, in the wake of a global pandemic, floods, earthquakes, extreme weather conditions, and financial and political turmoil. In fact, I feel that it's crucial that we learn the skills and the tools that are needed to stay afloat and even do well in life, given all that's going on. So, what's the problem? Well, as you're aware, these are some unprecedented times and on a global scale. What we're experiencing in our backyard is reflected many times over in the world at large. Meaning, if we're still dealing with the effects of COVID here in the US, imagine where the developing countries are with it. Or if we're dealing with high gas prices or severe weather conditions, imagine what's going on in other countries that are less resourceful. While we're dealing with a pandemic, housing and climate crisis, homelessness, massive layoffs, a recession, and political turmoil here at home, other countries like Israel and Pakistan may be on the brink of a civil war, along with financial and social collapse, while other countries like Ukraine continue to be plagued with war, death, and destruction. So where are we going with all this? Sadly, no one knows. Some say we're on the verge of a global collapse. Others are more optimistic and say it's the coming of the messianic era where peace, tranquility, and prosperity will prevail. Well, what I'm most interested in is how you're doing with all this on an individual level and how we collectively as global citizens are dealing with this level of chaos. These are some of the fireworks and bombs that are going off around us, and I want to know how you're managing. Based on my intro that I shared with you earlier, you're aware that I went through a mini version of this kind of chaos early in my life. I shared about how my earliest childhood memories were based on memories of death and destruction. But I also shared that I was able to come through all that chaos in one piece and in relatively good mental and physical health. Again, to be able to experience extreme difficulty in the face of life and come through okay is called resilience. So I want to ask you, are you being resilient at this time in your life? Are you able to wake up every morning still feeling gratitude for what you have, for what you're able to give and receive? Are you able to count your blessings and see your glass as half full? Or the opposite? Are you waking up every morning feeling heavy, sad, burdened, and wondering how you're going to get through the day? So if your tank is a little low at this time and you need some support and encouragement, I'm here to offer what I can to help you through these challenging times. Given all that's going on right now, my hope is to create an intentional global community where we come together and offer care and support to one another and be a source of inspiration for others in the world. So today, I want to share with you 3 practical tools that will definitely help you build resilience. I personally myself have been practicing these tools most of my life, and I can assure you that if you apply some version of these tools to your own life, you will do just fine. By the way, I also love to hear from you with regards to what you're doing to help stay afloat and positive during these times. So feel free to share your comments in the Facebook chat box below. Okay, so we're going to continue this conversation, but first, let's take a short break And you can go ahead and check out my website at Center on Peace in the meantime, and we'll be right back. See you soon. Welcome back. So, what's the medicine? Research shows us that the number one way people are able to maintain a strong sense of self during difficult times is to have some kind of a spiritual belief or practice. Now, it doesn't have to be a formal religion or practice to be considered spiritual. It just means that you have some belief in a power above your own ego or your immediate sense of self. That could mean a higher power like God, or it could mean a connection to humanity or nature, like the ocean or the mountains. Having a spiritual belief or practice has many benefits that help fight depression and anxiety. For example, when you pray or meditate or spend time in nature, you neutralize the bad chemicals in your brain, so you're not deep in your worries about the past or the future. You remain grounded and calm in the present time, and remaining present in the moment actually helps alleviate signs of stress and anxiety. I like to share my own story around spirituality with you, which I think you will find interesting. My point here is to show you that even in the face of considerable chaos, warfare, and trauma, it is still possible to find something beautiful and life-affirming. For me, growing up during wartime in a country that was going through a religious revolution, having to escape and become a refugee, and then migrating a second time to the US to start life twice over, was definitely more than any person could handle, let alone a child. So you may wonder, how did I do it? How did I find a consistent, sustainable spiritual path to something greater than myself, and at such a young age with little to no guidance? How was it possible to build something so solid and secure to help sustain me and help me bypass a whole host of problems, like I mentioned, mental illness, addiction, and poor health? It's really amazing what the human spirit can achieve with just a little bit of tenacity. Many of you know that I have quite an extensive background in Sufism, even though I was born into a Jewish family. You see, in Iran, like most patriarchal societies, girls are not encouraged to pursue a spiritual path regardless of their religion. Even though I had a strong proclivity towards spirituality from an early age, I could not formally study anything religious simply because of my gender. I remember being around age 5 or 6 years old and going to the temple with my grandmother. Like the other women, we always had to sit in the back of the temple, and all I could ever hear were the women talking nonstop around me. The women talked because no one could understand what was being said or read or discussed by the priests. But over the years, I just watched and observed the movements of these men. I observed how they would quietly whisper to themselves while closing their eyes, or gently rock back and forth while reading the holy books. In my childish way of trying to make sense of what I was seeing, I used to think that these men were actually talking to God. So I would go home and hold up a book and pretend that I was talking to God. Believe it or not, that started my own inner spiritual journey towards a very personal inner experience. I couldn't rely on external religion to teach me how to pray or seek inner guidance, but I learned to do that by just watching people and then getting creative and finding a way to what worked for me. Also around this time, shortly before we fled Iran, I was introduced to Sufism. And some of you may know that the Sufis, or the dervishes of Iran, were the spiritual seekers who denounced the material world in exchange for a higher spiritual calling. I remember a day when I went to on a school outing at the local museum, and I must have been about 6 years old. I went with my class, but I ended up wandering off on my own because I had found a corner in the museum where they were showcasing the artifacts and clothes of the ancient dervishes of Iran. And I was so moved and so intrigued by everything in that room that I stayed in there for what seemed like hours or until I was found. These two experiences ended up eventually helping me find the path to where I am today, a place of inner peace, love, and gratitude. People often ask me how I explain this strange and even bizarre spiritual upbringing. And I say, for me, it's simple. My Jewish roots taught me about the existence of God, and my Sufi roots taught me about a direct path to the experience of God. For me, one cannot exist without the other. The two of them together have formed the person I am today. Another way of looking at my upbringing is to say that my biological family is Jewish and my adopted family is Sufi. I will share more with you about my spiritual journey as we delve further into the topic of resilience. But for now, I want to go and talk about the second tool to cultivate in your life. And that's having some form of movement, activity, or exercise in your daily life. Again, it doesn't have to be anything formal like going to the gym 3 times a week, although that's a great way to release stress. But if you're not a gym person, then just walking every day for half an hour or an hour around the neighborhood or the park is sufficient. When you move your body, you release endorphins or good chemicals in the brain. And by doing that you help alleviate symptoms of stress and worry. If you do that every day for half an hour or an hour, you're resisting building stagnation in your mind and body. Now, for me, walking helps me stay strong. I have found that if I don't move my body, depression is very quick to set in. So when I get on the treadmill or I go walking, I work through what's bothering me or stressing me out while I'm exercising, and then I end up reaching a place of resolution in my mind where I release all the negative effects of those thoughts. And then I'm not holding on to the toxic effects of negative thinking. So take a mental imagery inventory of your life right now. How much do you move daily? Are you mostly stuck sitting behind a desk or your computer or on the couch or behind the steering wheel? If so, what's one small step you can take today to move your body just a little bit more? We're talking baby steps. Think of it and do it again tomorrow. If you do this for 2 weeks straight, you have built up a positive habit and it's there for you for life. Okay, the third and final tool that I want to recommend that you try to implement into your life is the practice of radical honesty. At first, that may sound strange or even unrealistic because you're not used to it. You may not even be familiar with it. But in order to hold yourself accountable and make the necessary changes in your life, I want to encourage you to be totally honest with yourself and about yourself at the present time, what's happening in your life. So if you're having a hard time with some aspect of life, like relationships or work, I want to encourage you to acknowledge it and talk about it with a trusted friend or family member or anyone who's a good listener. You see, the reason is because most people who struggle with depression and anxiety feel very alone in their thoughts and feelings. They think no one will understand them or be able to help them. And that's just not true. So just acknowledging that you're having a difficult time is a big step forward. For me, when I have negative or anxious thoughts and I can't work through them or release them through meditation or exercise, I just acknowledge them, that I'm acknowledge that I'm having a hard time, so I don't feel guilty or pressured to feel happy or be in control. And then I can just let it go. Okay. And I love the explanation that Rumi gives. He says, sometimes you have unwanted guests visiting your home, moving the furniture around, banging things here and there, disturbing your peace of mind. But eventually they will leave. So I know that I don't need to fret about the situation or try to control it in any shape or form. I just let it be. Radical honesty is to do what you can to acknowledge your situation and do something about it. But if you can't, then you give yourself room to have those feelings without feeling bad. Then, when you're ready, you seek guidance. Believe it or not, practicing these 3 tools for over 3 decades is what has helped me stay grounded and sane for the most of my life. Okay, so to wrap it up, remember that there are 3 important ways to build resilience. Number 1 is connecting with something greater than yourself, whether it's a formal religion or informal spirituality like meditation or connection with nature. Number 2, creating movement in your daily life, either through formal exercise or walks around the park or the neighborhood. And number 3, practicing radical honesty with yourself, talking and sharing about what's going on for you with a trusted friend, family member, clergy, or therapist. If you like the content of my podcast today, please like my page and tune in twice a month, every second and fourth Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific time for more helpful talks like this one. If you can't make it to the talk live, then a recording will be available wherein you can watch it at a later time at your own leisure. I'm Dr. Ellie Zarrabian, coming to you from Transformation Network, from chaos to connection.
You have been listening to Dr. Ellie Zarrabian, host of From Chaos to Connection. Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com for more resources and tools to help with healing on your journey of life. You can impact the globe in the most powerful way possible. Whatever your spiritual background and cultural heritage is, you can transform pain and trauma into building community and connection. Join Dr. Ellie in identifying what you need to heal within and in our world. For more information, visit centeronpeace.com. That's centeronpeace.com.